everybody. So I've been reading through some of the articles reporting on the latest from the World Health Organization about the origins of coronavirus. And they're saying that it's very unlikely, apparently, that it leaked from a lab in Wuhan, which I suppose sort of echoes what they were saying initially and still doesn't diverge a hell of a lot from the sort of official narrative given out initially soon after coronavirus hit, but it came from a natural zoonotic source. But it jumped from a bat to a human, or but it jumped to a human via an intermediary species. And I've just been looking at this article in The Independent here today, reporting on this, and where was it? Is that evidence instead suggests COVID-19 emerged naturally in bats before being passed to humans via an intermediary animal host. First of all, is that they do not have evidence that happened, so far as I'm aware, or so far as we're aware. We do not have this pangolin, or whatever bat it is, or this rat, even if it was a bamboo rat, that this virus came from. We don't have evidence that happened. Furthermore, some of the first cases emerging in Wuhan, as has already been pointed out by the WHO themselves, didn't have any connection to the fish market, hadn't been there. And there may be cases going back to as early as the 17th of November, even, in China. And interestingly, and also this point that there's evidence to suggest that COVID-19 emerged naturally in bats, this is directly contradicted by another BBC article reporting on exactly the same thing, saying that the WHO has admitted that they're unsure exactly how that transmission happened. So, and that they currently lack evidence, or words to that effect. So, WHO lab leak, trying to find the BBC article. What does it say exactly? And also, this is a WHO investigation undertaken in conjunction with China. So I'm just wondering to the extent to which the WHO is being leaned on by China, and that they're trying to present a sort of sanitized version of events because of Chinese interest in not really wanting to go around pointing fingers at the international community and things like this, and keeping it all kind of under wraps and sanitized, and not wanting to be inflammatory on the world stage. Dr. Emberek told the press conference that the investigation had uncovered new information but had not dramatically changed the picture of the outbreak. Experts believe the virus is likely to have originated in animals before spreading to humans, but they're not sure how. So, how is that evidence then? That seems like either careless on the part of the Independent or misleading on the part of someone else. Dr. Emberek said work to identify the origins of COVID-19 pointed to a natural reservoir in bats, but it was unlikely that this happened in Wuhan. Yeah, as I've mentioned elsewhere, it would have to have come from likely horseshoe bats in northern China. So, why is it emerging in Wuhan? Why not Beijing? Why not any number of the huge cities in northern China with populations of horseshoe bats? He said identifying the animal pathway remained a work in progress, but that it was most likely to cross over to humans from an intermediary species. The experts also said there's no indication that the virus was circulating in Wuhan before the first official cases were reported there in December 2019. Liang Wanyan, an expert with China's Health Commission, says COVID-19 could have been in other regions before it was detected in Wuhan. Could have been, from China's Health Commission, said it could have been in other regions before it was detected in Wuhan. Well, why is it being detected in Wuhan then and not in other regions? Furthermore, there's only been about 4,500 deaths of coronavirus in the whole of China, with its 1.46 billion population, or something of that order. So it seems, for one thing, they managed to contain coronavirus in China pretty effectively. And yet, it doesn't seem to have appeared in other regions also. So, why is it not spreading like wildfire while they're clamping down on it in Wuhan, in other cities in northern China, for instance? WHO mission began in January, following months of negotiation with Beijing. The experts' visit was closely monitored by Chinese authorities. Do they mean this January? Or last January? Because this independent article says something a little different. Where does it say this? Yeah, the visit by the WHO team took months to negotiate after China only agreed to it amid massive international pressure at the World Health Assembly meeting last May, and Beijing has continued to resist calls for a strictly independent investigation. So they're saying it happened in January of what year? 2020? WHO mission began in this January following months of negotiation with Beijing. What, so you've given Beijing the chance to get everything cleared up before you send scientists to check the safety of a level 4 biosafety facility, and what you expect, like, they're given a year or so to prepare for WHO inspectors to come around, and what, it's not going to be in tip-top condition then? And what, the WHO, what, they just believe China? That's ridiculous. Anyway, back to the BBC article. It was unlikely that the expert group and its politically charged mission would be able to pinpoint the source. This is analysis by Michelle Roberts, health editor. Able to pinpoint the source of the pandemic in China a year after it began, exactly. But after visiting the Wuhan Institute of Virology, they had closed the lid on a controversial theory that coronavirus came from a lab leak or was made by scientists. Their search for clues also included a visit to the now famous wet market in Huanan, selling fish, meat and live wild animals that was linked to some of the first human cases. The team say the virus may have jumped from animals to humans, but they don't have the proof yet. Possible carriers include bats and pangolins, but has so far yet to find convincing evidence for this. Well, that contradicts to some extent the assertion made in the Independence article on the same story. Another line of investigation is whether the virus could have spread through imported frozen food. Yeah, now this is something that China's really trying to push. They're trying to say that the origin of COVID didn't come from China, and that China's hands are completely clean in it. That it couldn't have come from this virology institute in Wuhan. Definitely not. The hunt for the origin will continue. What was the laboratory theory? Speculation about the Wuhan Institute of Virology, one of China's top virus research labs, began last year and was propagated by former US President Donald Trump. In April, US State Department cables came to light suggesting that embassy officials were worried about biosecurity there. The office was sort of covering their back to sort of blame China, and sort of have something in line to sort of throw at China as like an accusation saying, look, your biosecurity safety facilities fucked up, whereas actually maybe the US released it deliberately, given their ties to China. The official US National Intelligence Director said at the time that while the virus was not man-made or genetically modified, officials were investigating whether the outbreak began through contact with animals or through a laboratory accident. But Dr. Emmerich said a visit to the laboratory during the mission showed it was very unlikely that anything could have leaked out. Yeah, at that point, of course, it seemed like that would have been the case. After a year of giving them a chance to sweep up all the bits of COVID lying around. He said the laboratory theory was not in the hypothesis that we will suggest for future studies. Well, I suppose not, if you've got to sort of keep things cool on the international stage. But, yeah, I mean, what China is trying to push for is that this virus brought into China via frozen food from other countries, and that it was some other country, and I think this could only be traced back to Donald Trump in the United States with his sort of anti-China rhetoric, very much, and so, being tough on China, this, that and the other, making China look bad on the international stage by having COVID emerge from China, then imposing sanctions and all this other stuff, and then boom, 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 flag waving America, you know, it's back on top, so to speak, in an international sense, negotiating more beneficial trade arrangements and so on with China. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to the crucial details being reported on in these two articles, one by the BBC, one by The Independent, there's a disconcerting lack of agreement on important issues within them. I think there's a disconcerting a disconcerting also assertion on the part of The Independent that evidence exists, or a real substantial base of evidence exists that this came from a natural zoonotic source and not from the WIV, when the Chinese had a history of misinformation and lies, and want to portray this image that China could never fuck up or anything like that, and they want to sort of advocate very much this view that it came from outside of China. And I think the reason why they'd like to advocate such a view is because I think in their heart of hearts, with their epidemiologists and their health centres and their centres for disease control and prevention, they probably do realise that actually this notion of it jumping from a pangolin to a human, or from horseshoe bat to a pangolin to a human, or horseshoe bat to rat to human, and so on, is really shaky and untenable, and that there exists a very, very small probability of that happening. And yeah, the Chinese have got scientists as well, so that's probably why they're pushing for this other story, but it came from imported frozen food. That's my estimation of it anyway. We need to conduct more surveys into animal species that could be a reservoir or act as a reservoir, not only in China, because a lot has already been tested here, the WHO chief said. Well, that contradicts a little bit the statement you made about all this evidence, doesn't it? The evidence clearly indicates this. However, we need to do more research. Why? Yeah, well, I still don't buy, obviously. Why would I buy what the World Health Organization say? They've just been corroborating the official line given out by the Chinese Communist Party ever since this happened. That's no, a joint Chinese WHO mission. The Chinese are resisting any efforts for an independent investigation into COVID. That alone speaks volumes, I think. I'm tempted more to say that American, Canadian, British double agents operating in Wuhan tried to release at successive times. China, with their levels of competence in dealing with infectious diseases, managed to get on top of it several times. For on the third or fourth time that Western agents attempted to release it, they were like, all right, enough is enough now, we're going to retaliate. I think that's more like it. And send it to the West. And we're in the middle of a bio-war. So do I suspect blame on the part of the Chinese? Yeah, of course I do. If you go around fucking with their biosafety laboratories too much and trying to kill their population, yeah, I think it's only right and just that they would retaliate. And you certainly have to anticipate that they would, at least. You can't kill a bunch of someone else's people and not expect trouble. You can't. I think that's more or less what happened. But do I believe this bullshit put out by the WHO? No, of course I don't. No, not at all. Thank you for watching, everyone. Bye bye.